I think one of the unique aspects of Native FEWS Alliance is that we are working together in an interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary community of scientists, engineers, community members, tribal college, faculty, and university partners working to think about the challenges that face Indigenous communities in the environment, specifically using the food, energy, water nexus. And I think as Indigenous peoples, we already think this way of thinking holistically about our ecosystem and how everything connects from the different species that are part of the ecosystem all the way to the human being. And all of these living entities are relatives in our worldview, and that there are energies that fuel that process. So as an Indigenous people, we already think holistically, and that's basically what the FEWS system is. And that allows us to be collaborative across the different disciplines and also to utilize our knowledge as scientists and engineers to work with communities and their knowledge to co-design solutions towards the challenges that they face.
Well, food, energy, water systems comprise about 90% of the causes of climate change. They're important to human health, they're important to survival of the planet, and yet we never see them as a system. In reductionist science, you study one thing individually, and it's very important to have a holistic systems view of food, energy, water systems. And Carlotta Chief and I both had trainee grants to look at these integrated systems. And we worked on the trainee grant and realized that we could do much more work working together in alliance to work with Indigenous populations on systemic food, energy, water systems. So as part of understanding food, energy, water systems as a science, as a research area, we need to look at the translation to practice because there are critical challenges in Indigenous populations in solving those problems, not only identifying them, but solving those problems. And people that really understand the context are people that come from those communities. So we very much have a community-based approach to solving the problems of food, energy, water systems in Indigenous lands.
Some of the challenges around food, energy, and water really stem from capitalist influences within our communities. And so when we think of the different kinds of challenges around food, energy, and water, we have to get our students to really think about how capitalism is influencing and driving some of these injustices, the challenges, and inequities within our communities. And teachers have the capacity to bring those dialogues into the classroom, have students examine what's happening, but then to also think about our Indigenous philosophies associated with food, energy, and water, and to be intentional in bringing those aspects into the curriculum, into the classroom, and to have students reconnect to those knowledge systems and philosophies embedded in each of those different aspects of food, energy, and water. And when students have the education and context around the challenges as well as Indigenous philosophies, they have a tendency to want to advocate and protect their land, their people, their water, their communities.
I think not that I've learned so much through this gathering, but that has reinforced what we already know, that we know that we're on the right path with this initiative and other initiatives that we're working on, that tribal colleges are working on. You know, I really believe that tribal colleges can not just solve the food challenges, energy challenges on our own lands, but even throughout the world because of the kind of things that I mentioned, our ability to sustain ourselves over generations. If we can figure out a way we saw examples of what the Atum people are doing with their farms and their traditional seeds. We know, I mentioned June berries. There's so many plants like that, wild rice, other things that our people have used for generations. if we can figure out a way to farm them, to grow them at scale, we could potentially solve not only our own food challenges, but the food challenges facing the entire world. So
our particular role, as I think about the larger role of the Native FEWS Alliance, is to provide some of those alternative career tracks. So many of our students do go on to become tribal liaisons, work for the federal government, work for state governments, and work for tribal governments. And there is a way to give back to home communities while being in STEM, being Native, Indigenous, and being involved in food, energy, and water systems. So while some of our partners may address more of the scientific or technical approaches involved in food, energy, water systems, we're really focused on those complementary skill sets that will allow students to better communicate what it is that they're doing within the FEWS discipline. And I think the Native FEWS Alliance is really making progress in that direction. It's bringing together a group of wonderful programs, academic and non-academic, has some really amazing and exciting, enthusiastic people that are involved to hopefully really innovate in opportunities available for our communities and for our students.
I think it's going great. I think we've had a really good time being part of the Alliance. We've met so many new people, and we've started a new partnership we're building out with Al-Kaslikis to help us with another program that we work together on. So it's been great. I mean, I think the new collaborations have been really exciting.
Yeah, in particular, we're being able to reach further down into the tribal colleges and get students from those groups into the Geoscience Alliance. But also the Geoscience Alliance is not just about the students, it's about faculty and other people that can actually move students along the pathway. So we take an undergraduate, we find somebody to have them do research with, and then hopefully a graduate program or get them into a job or whatever. So the more connections we have, the better.
I was totally excited by the number of undergraduate and graduate students that are here for this conference. It's grown quite a bit since last year, and it's just very exciting to see this many Native students this excited about connecting traditional knowledge and science, all in the service of going back and helping their communities. It's been very exciting to watch the students and how motivated they've seemed. One meeting like this can be so inspiring to students.
One thing I've enjoyed and learned at this gathering is the importance of starting with culture. We started this meeting off visiting a community, learning from them, going to their cultural center and learning from some of their cultural leaders, engaged, in place, slow, with no agenda. Starting our meetings off with prayer, opening in a good way. It's important to lead with culture and then follow with science. And this is a good way of modeling the behavior that we want to see here in the FEWS network.
There's so many amazing, dynamic scholars here. I love being in the presence of other Indigenous scholars in the sciences. It's such a different atmosphere, and that's precious, that time that we could share. And because of that shared identity and those similarities in culture and experiences, to me, that's just precious. And I want to be able to sit and visit, and we don't necessarily have that time with the way our schedule's currently structured.
The students that have attended this gathering are amazing. And students are our current leaders and our future leaders. And I think the hope is through the Alliance, and certainly our work through the Alliance, is to listen to our student leaders. They're driving, I think, the programming that's needed. They're telling us what's needed. And that's just exemplified in this particular meeting. The students in attendance have really come forward, sharing their thoughts, their opinions, their experiences, their stories, and their critiques. And that's really important for the rest of us to listen to and to respond to. So I just think the individual stories that we're hearing from our students and getting their input has really been instrumental to the success of this meeting.
One of the really important aspects of this initiative is mentoring, and that kind of circle that we as Native people are all part of, that we're all part of the same circle, and we're moving that circle, expanding it, and moving forward all the time. And one way to do that is through mentors, and I think that is really important. So we've seen and heard from some really great mentors. One is a gentleman at Tohonatum Community College who yesterday, he said, when he was doing a little presentation, and he said, well, you know, I think my most important crop is my interns. And this is the man whose grandfather's seeds are the traditional seeds that the O'odham Nation, his program, are using now, that came from his grandfather. And then we heard this morning from 2 of his former interns and students who are now running one of the Santa Vera co-op farm. So sustaining it for generations. So that's like intergeneration, 3 generations there that are, you know, sustaining their people and their foods. So to me, that was a really cool thing to hear. And even though it was, you know, you sort of had to put it together yourself, but that's what they were saying, that intergenerationalness of everything that we're doing, and the important, the circular patterns that we're all moving in, I thought was really, really significant.